Reflecting on what professional supervision is all about is a really, really important question. Even though it might seem like a boring question and we all really know what professional supervision is about, it's one of the key areas that we often get asked, what is the purpose of supervision and what are the benefits of receiving and providing this thing called professional supervision? I think one of the other important things to think about is, how do you want to set up the relationship? What do you want your supervisor to know about you? Because often in organisations, you will have a supervisor that is your line manager and also might provide the professional discussion in your role as well. So as I'm getting you to think and reflect today, if you could just jot down a few things with each of the questions that I will ask in the context of what professional supervision is all about, and then bring that along to the training so that we can explore as in smaller and large groups. But today is really about getting you to do the pre-thinking and pre-reflecting around that. That is really, really important. So in thinking about, and reflecting on professional supervision, for supervisors seeing this short video, it's a professional activity. And often what we find in the research and the literature is that most supervisors find themselves in the role purely because they're in a leadership role. Or the other scenario is that they've been in the organisation for a long period of time and staff are asking for supervision, so the organisation says, okay, well, we'll get that person to do it. But the key crucial thing to think about is, if you're a supervisor, have you had any formal professional development training at the very least? And as we know, in Australia, there are no formal qualifications, accredited qualifications around professional supervision. We might have a human services degree that just has one unit in it. So I'm bringing to you the concept that as supervisors, professional supervision and coaching and support is a professional activity. And for supervisees or staff that may be watching this video, it's really important that you have an expectation that your supervisor has been trained and actually understands the contexts, all that, the administrative boring stuff that supervision is meant to provide. So there's some key questions I'd like to ask you. And I guess the first one is, what do you want your supervisor to know about you? What is it that you want them to ask you to get to know you, or what do you want to tell them so that they get to know you in that collegial or supervisory relationship? So the question is, I would like my supervisor to know this about me. And these are the things that are important to me in the supervision space and relationship. Now, they might be about even process things like, I'd really like my supervisor to know that having regular catch-ups are really, really important for me. Or I'd really like my supervisor to know that, I live an hour away and it takes me a while to get to work every day. All those logistical things for your supervisor is really important to know. Or you might like your supervisor to know that how to give you feedback or how to have a difficult or crucial discussion with you. They're really important things that you might like your supervisor to know. For supervisors, it's exactly the same question. What would you like your supervisees or your staff to know about you? And in fact, what would you like to know about the staff that you're supervising? Really, really important questions. So I want to leave those couple of questions with you to think about and jot down some answers and some reflections and bring those along to the training so we can discuss them as a large group. The next question I've got for you is more about setting up supervision. And the reason we ask these questions is because in how Amovita provides supervision, when we get together with a staff member for the first time, or in fact we've had somebody for a while in supervision, we'll actually go back to these questions. The reason these context questions are really important is because they actually form part of our intake process. We ask these questions to really set the expectations and have a baseline in supervision. The other reason that that's really important is because if somebody is going through a period of being unwell, fatigued, stressed, tired or burnt out, or there's something happening for them and the supervision space becomes a little bit wobbly, then the great thing is the supervisor can take the staff member back to these questions, or in fact the staff member can take the supervisor back to these questions if the supervisor's not turning up on time or not taking supervision seriously enough. So these questions are really great to be able to set aside the context from the relationship and to really go back to reset the expectations in supervision. So the first question I have for you to think about is, how do you define what professional supervision is? What is supervision for you? How would you define it, and what are the components? So have a think about that and write down your response in preparation for the training. The second question I would like you to think about is, what is important for you, if you're a supervisor or a supervisee, what is important for you to ensure that supervision is effective? Now, if as a supervisor you've had great training, you're passionate about supervision and you know exactly what it can deliver and the potential that it has in the workspace, then you'll be striving all the time to make sure that supervision is effective. Now, that doesn't mean that it's up to you to do that all the time. It's actually also up to the supervisor to really drive that process and to make sure that they're very clear for you on what makes supervision effective. So if you could have a think about that, jot a few ideas down. What do you think ensures that supervision is effective? The next question I'd like you to think about is, what do you think is the purpose of supervision? Why do we have it? Providing supervision in the workplace costs a lot of money. There's a lot of resources that go into it. Supervisors need to be well trained. Supervisors need to be at the forefront of best practice a lot of the time. We don't want supervisors turning up to supervision really fatigued, tired or burnt out. So what is the purpose of supervision that is important for the supervisor and the staff member? So just explore and reflect upon that and explore your responses. The next question I have for you to consider, now you might see this question very, very similar to the purpose question, and it is around, what do you think are the benefits of receiving supervision? And for supervisors, what do you think are the benefits are of providing professional supervision? Have a think about if you're having line supervision and professional supervision, which I hope that you are. You might like to think about, what are the benefits for the staff member? What are the benefits from a supervisor's perspective in providing professional supervision? What are the benefits to the organisation? Because there's lots of benefits. And what are the benefits to the clients, families, customers, consumers that we provide services to? The next question is as equally as important. What are those qualities and attributes that you think a supervisor needs to have to be effective? What are the qualities and attributes? So I guess in this question it's thinking about, do you see that there's a difference between a quality and an attribute, or it's okay if you see them as the same thing. So to explore that and reflect on for you, and I will always ask staff this question when I'm starting off in supervision, as your external supervisor, what are the qualities and attributes you think that you would like me to have to be effective in this supervisory space? The next question I have is one of my favourites. So I frame it up this way. The question is, what expectations do you have or would you have of your supervisor? So if you're seeing this and you've never received professional supervision and you've just had line supervision or line management supervision, have a think about what your expectations are. If you've never received professional supervision, have a think about what expectations you actually would have of your supervisor. And how I frame it up, because I'm an external supervisor, I will say to staff in that intake meeting, as your external supervisor, what expectations do you have of me? And I'll be really interested to see what you come up with, because what I find each and every time, there's a couple of things that people are really, really looking for. The great thing about this question is that you can actually then hopefully go back to your supervisor if you haven't had the opportunity, and you can talk about those expectations. And that's really, really important, because it really sets the foundation of the relationship and it sets the foundation of supervision. So again, I'll just restate that. What expectations do you have of your supervisor in that process? So supervisors, be really open-minded and think about what are the expectations you would want your staff to have of you as a supervisor, and reflect on that as you write down your responses. The last question I have that we ask in supervision is there anything that you would prefer not to discuss, or is there anything that's off the table for you? Now, I'll give you a bit of a hint. Normally what happens in this question is that people will say no, everything is on the table. Now, as we know from a cultural perspective, there are differences for different cultures in terms of how they receive and engage in supervision. So by this I mean that some professionals from different cultures will bring the whole person to supervision. So that means they will want to talk about their cultural background, they want to talk about community, they want to talk about cultural protocols, which is really, really exciting. For some staff, that may not be okay, because they see it as that boundary between the personal and professional. I want you to really think about, how do you bring the whole person to supervision so that you get the best out of it? And when staff say to me, no, I'm open to talk about anything, then my response is, that's fantastic, because there will be times from your professional framework that we talked about earlier that we will talk about beliefs and values. We will talk about some of the things that are impacting on your work that might be around beliefs and values. So again, to think about, is there anything that you would prefer not to talk about in supervision? So see how you go with that response. So in thinking about excellence in supervisory practice, in thinking about setting up the relationship, setting up the environment, thinking about the context in which professional supervision operates in, those questions are really, really important as you set up supervision or as you start receiving supervision. Now, I want you to think about, are there any other questions that are really, really important for you to actually explore in the beginning of the supervisory space? And I'm really excited to see what answers you come back with, or what is really important for you, because we'll explore it in the training when we see you very soon.